very critical time to discuss this issue because this is a point of change which could be a point for a better future to the city. It could lead to a great city, or it could lead to a total destruction of the city. Now, Bombay has been going through crisis after crisis. At independence, it was kind of a lovely, middle-class British colonial city, mainly with services, people working some industries, textile mills, etc. Pretty well planned with a strong urban core in the Fountain area, spreading out up to Santa Cruz along the railway line, etc. But then what happened after independence is we had a sudden migration of people coming into Bombay in droves, mainly in search of work, due to famine, due to failures in crops, etc. So there was a kind of a push effect, pushing people into Bombay, and Bombay really was not prepared to accept those people. So I would say we could look at the last 50 years of crisis as a crisis of migration and a crisis of servicing hygienic communities, which we failed to do. But the next decade or 2 decades is going to be a crisis of aspirations. India now is becoming a well-to-do country. We are producing a very large middle class that has great expectations. And more or less, the last 20 years, we could ride this roller coaster on the boom in the economy. But basically, what people are asking for is a right to shelter and a right to livable cities, a good quality of life, sustainable environments, and issues like this. So it's extremely important that we look at how does the city grow? How is it planned? And you can see what's happened to the cities. We have piecemeal, blotchy, ad hoc development on plots all over the place with no linkage between high-rise centers and metropolitan transport. Absolutely inefficient infrastructure layouts, huge distances between density nodes. An efficiently planned city is a city where people have access to shelter because land prices are affordable. Now, the only way to do this is to give access to as much land as possible to as many people. The only way to do that is to have an efficient transport system. Now, how does an efficient transport system work? You have to have nodes, you have to have hubs, you have to have an urban center, and these become kind of centers of a web. And that web is connected through mass transit. So a good plan of Bombay would look something like multiple spider webs all linked up with each other, with nodes in which people could come efficiently. There would be very large opportunities at those nodes. The closer you would be to those nodes, the higher the cost of land would be. There's a factor called bid pricing in land. The more opportunity for people to visit there, the more people will bid for those plots. Institutions like banks will pay more than a shopping center will pay more than a housing colony will pay more than urban agriculture. So there's a kind of a bid price curve with the higher ends of the curve near nodes and hubs and urban centers because people want to go to those places. So how do you make a plan like that? Only 18% of people in Bombay own houses. About 50–60% of them live in illegal structures. A lot of people live under rent control, which is a totally unviable way for people to live. And one of the solutions we've come up with is the slum rehabilitation scheme, where we actually give people free housing. That also is not really a viable long-term solution. It's giving away housing. So what I feel we need to do, we need more participation from people. People in India do not participate in urban development the way they would do in block committees in New York City, or the way they would do in even Hong Kong. There's very strong community groups, etc. So that end of the spectrum has to develop in India. Urban policy is made up of 3 things. It's made up of investments, like investments in schools, investments in water supply, investments in education. The government has to take a responsibility for trunk infrastructure, large investments, systems like healthcare systems for the people, basic education for people, has to be pushed by the government. They can give incentives. That's the second thing. You have investments, then incentives. You can give incentives to people to build schools by giving them more FSIs, giving them tax holidays, giving them benefits to start health facilities, education facilities, and maybe even to build private roads. The other thing is regulation. It's also important that government regulate our urban structure where safety and hygiene is concerned. So a good policy would have regulation, it would have incentives, and it would have investments. Now, what's happening today, if you look at the new town development scheme or megacity scheme, it kind of throws the whole responsibility on the developer. That is not going to work. There has to be some sort of partnership in this, where the basic structure plan of the city is managed by the government, and where the pockets of local area development is managed by private sector developers and communities. So I think this is the path we have to pursue, is streamlining all of these odd schemes into one single window, transparent system of development. The other issue is, what is the government's role in terms of infrastructure? I think mass transit, storm drainage, these things take place on the regional scale. Water supply, it takes place on the regional scale. You cannot expect private developers to be providing water supply and regional storm drainage systems, etc. So there has to be some interface between what the private sector does, what the public sector does, and who's responsible for seeing that this happens in a very smooth manner. We have to also be aware of the fact that who is driving the urban economy. Let's be clear. The kind of housing we call luxury housing in India is just middle-class housing for a huge number of managers, professionals, service people who are necessary to run an economy. If we don't provide housing for these people, the urban economy is not going to function. If we don't provide livable, enjoyable cities, these people are not going to come to cities. They'll go to America or they'll go to Singapore to work. So our challenge is really to create a city for everyone, a city for the bottom end and the top end, which work together in a kind of symbiotic manner. Now, what would a good urban center be like? I think a city needs a city center in multiples, not a city center, but nodes around a metropolitan area. Each one may have a different character. There could be a node which is where artists and galleries are found, like Soho in Manhattan. You find it full of art galleries. There could be a place which is mainly professionals, architects and engineers and people in the infrastructure industry may cluster around another center. There could be a center where there are more colleges and universities and it's more of an educational center. These things kind of happen naturally, but you can also give incentives and you can give infrastructure which encourage that kind of a specialized development of different urban centers. But it certainly is essential that Bombay cannot be 1,000 suburbs in search of a city. It has to be a well-knitted web of nodes, hubs in a strong urban center with a strong identity, which will make it an exciting place for people to live. Basically, as I pointed out, urbanization involves a hierarchy of centers. You could start with maybe 10,000 neighborhoods in a city which are walkable, which are high density, where people know each other face to face. And then you move from a neighborhood up to a district center where maybe it's specialized, maybe it's retail, or maybe it's service oriented. And then you come to the city center. I think number one, it's important because people need a sense of identity. So a city center provides identity. It provides highly specialized recreational activities which only a large cluster of several million people can produce. A good museum probably takes 10 million people population as a sort of economy of scale to generate a good museum. Probably a good library takes about 500,000 people. So you get a hierarchy of facilities which start to cluster towards a center. As you get more and more people, you get more high quality specialized activities in terms of restaurants, in terms of recreation, in terms of intellectual stimulation. To me, the most important thing about cities is they are centers of creativity. They're where inventions are made, they're where poetry is written, and they're where people reach transcendental moments of ecstasy. And to me, that's what life is all about. And that's what cities do, and they should do it for everyone, not just for a few artists or a few thinkers. City centers really make a city thrive. The cities which are most successful economically are surprisingly the highest planned cities. Singapore, about 60% of the housing is government housing. Almost all the land is government-owned land on long-term leases built according to urban design plans prepared by the government. It's very important to look at what these other cities did in terms of planning and how planning became a facilitator and an enabler for great cities to emerge. Aspirations are becoming more global due to the media. Today, if you don't have a car, people think that you're a failure. And the whole value system, for good or for bad, is changing in India, where the kind of mobile phone you have, the kind of television set you have, the kind of car you're doing, does make a difference. These have become cues, are markers about people's position in a very complex society. So I think the average middle-class Indian is very much aware of the labels on clothes, of a lifestyle. They see people sitting in cafes in Paris. They want to know, where is that cafe in Bombay? Where is that garden? Where is that boulevard? Where is that urban forest that I can go walking? And I think this aspirational crisis that I was talking about earlier is what's going to drive real estate. It's what's going to drive city building, and it's going to drive the way politics evolves also. Because people now are becoming aware of things, they want things, and they see things. And in the end, we're all here in this earth for the good life. We want to come home, we want to relax, we want to be peaceful. We don't want to come home to garbage dumped on the street, pollution, smoke blowing through the air, and bad environments. So I think this issue of livability, of sustainability, are things which are not pie-in-the-sky dreams. They are basic necessities to the average Indian middle class today. People used to buy rooms, and now they're buying towns. They like bigger schemes, which have clubs and swimming pools, underground parking. They're looking for amenity as much as they are a house. They're looking for a club where they can meet friends. I think they used to be looking for shelter, and now they're looking for a lifestyle. And I think we have to recognize that to achieve this, we have to virtually rebuild our cities. And I think that's what the challenge of the future is. How do we rebuild a metropolitan area like Bombay? Are we prepared for that? That's the issue.